The doorbell rang, a normal sound on an ordinary day. Martha opened the door and froze. Orchids. Lilies. Too beautiful to be random. A card nestled among the petals. Last night was amazing. Let's do it again soon. Caitlin. Her world went silent. Her fingers numbed. Her knees buckled. As the bouquet crashed to the floor, so did everything she believed about her husband and her life. 55-year-old Martha Levinson stared at the flowers scattered on the floor, her heart beating in her ears like a bird in a cage. 25 years of marriage shattered in a single moment. The silver anniversary they'd planned for next month suddenly felt like a cruel joke. She placed the bouquet on the coffee table, the card face up like evidence at a crime scene. The afternoon light that usually filled her living room with warmth now seemed harsh and exposing. "Who is Caitlin?" she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty room. Her wedding ring caught the light as she wiped away a tear. From the closet, she pulled down a silver box engraved, "Martha and Robert, 25 years together." This anniversary box, which she'd been filling with mementos for months, trembled in her unsteady hands. Martha opened it, revealing a leather-bound photo album. The first page showed their wedding day, with her handwritten note, "Love is a choice." She flipped through honeymoon photos, anniversary trips, their history documented through her photographer's eye. Each image now held a question: was he faithful then? Was he thinking of someone else? The last page held her message, grateful for a quarter-century of memories, forever together, alongside a Florida beach resort brochure where they had planned their golden years adventure. Late that afternoon, time passed excruciatingly slowly. Martha sat motionless, the card read until her eyes burned with unshed tears. When she heard the key in the lock, her entire body tensed. 58-year-old Robert entered with his usual "I'm home." The words died as he sensed the heavy atmosphere. He stopped, seeing Martha's tear-stained face and then the bouquet. "What's this?" as she asked, her voice unnaturally calm, belying the storm inside her. Robert approached, his face draining of color as he saw the card. He picked it up, reading it repeatedly as if hoping the words might change. "Martha, I can." His voice trailed off. "Explain. Please do." Martha fought to keep steady while her world collapsed. Robert sank into the chair, shoulders slumped in defeat. The confession spilled out. Caitlin Morris, a 34-year-old colleague. An affair lasting 18 months. It started professionally but gradually became more. Why? Martha's voice cracked, tears finally spilling over. "After 25 years, with our anniversary just a month away." "I don't know," Robert answered hollowly, staring at his hands. "Sometimes with you, I feel old. Like my best years are behind me. She makes me feel young again, important. But it was a mistake." The words sounded rehearsed, empty. Martha couldn't hold back her tears as Robert repeated apologies that seemed to bounce off the walls. 25 years of trust, and what were our promises worth? She dropped the anniversary album to the floor. The silver box followed, landing with a crack as the lid flew open. 25 years of memories, ticket stubs, dried flowers, notes, scattered across the hardwood like the pieces of her heart. The pain in her chest was physical, a crushing weight. 15 years ago, Martha had contemplated divorce when a prestigious gallery offered her a solo exhibition, but Robert insisted she turn it down, claiming she should prioritize family. She had compromised then. Not this time. "Do you love her?" Martha asked, her final question hanging between them. After a long silence, Robert answered, "I don't know." Those 3 words told her everything. Not even a denial. With strange calm, Martha quietly packed a suitcase with essentials, her camera equipment, some clothes, valuables. "Where are you going?" Robert finally asked, suddenly looking older. "To my father's house." At least he's never betrayed me, Martha replied, walking past the scattered photographs, evidence of a life built on sand. She closed the door without looking back. Exhaustion etched deep lines across Martha's face as she navigated the familiar suburban streets. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened as she turned onto the tree-lined avenue of her childhood. The two-story White House appeared exactly as she remembered, meticulously maintained front yard, the old wooden bench on the porch, flower beds her mother had planted decades ago. Everything looked unchanged, while Martha herself had transformed completely. She parked in the driveway but couldn't bring herself to exit immediately. Taking several deep breaths, she rehearsed explanations in her mind. How could she tell her father that her seemingly perfect marriage had shattered overnight? Finally gathering her courage, she grabbed her hastily packed suitcase and approached the front door. Before she could knock, the door swung open. George Brandon stood in the doorway, his 83-year-old frame slightly stooped but still commanding. Martha immediately noticed something different about his eyes. Once filled with scholarly confidence, they now held the distinctive shadow of someone harboring secrets. Yet at the sight of his daughter, his face brightened instantly. "Martha! What a wonderful surprise," he exclaimed, embracing her with unexpected strength. Martha lingered in his embrace, finding comfort in his familiar scent, pipe tobacco and old books, unchanged since her childhood. "What's wrong?" George asked as he ushered her inside, noting her reddened eyes and weary expression. "It's a long story, Dad," Martha replied, her voice hollow. "Can I stay here for a while?" The living room walls formed a visual history of their family, covered with photographs Martha had taken throughout the years. Sitting on her mother's favorite armchair, warming her hands around a mug of tea, Martha recounted Robert's betrayal. George listened silently, his weathered hands occasionally clenching into fists as she spoke. "The man's a damn fool," George finally declared when she finished, anger evident in his usually measured tone. 25 years with an extraordinary woman like you, and he throws it away for what? To feel young again?" Martha managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Dad." As evening shadows lengthened across the room, George's gaze settled on Martha's high school graduation photo displayed prominently on the mantel. Martha followed his eyes, noticing for the first time how the family forehead crease she had supposedly inherited appeared notably different from her father's. As a photographer trained to notice details, how had she missed this? "You've always treasured memories," George said, his voice taking on an unusual distance. "Is that why photography became your calling? The power to preserve moments?" Martha nodded. "Yes. Though photographs sometimes reveal truths while concealing others. Different viewers see different stories in the same image." George opened his mouth as if to say something significant, then seemed to reconsider. "Indeed," he murmured instead, abruptly changing the subject. For a week, Martha and George settled into an uneasy routine. During days, Martha busied herself organizing bookshelves and sorting through old photographs. At nights, she lay awake, her mind cycling between Robert's betrayal and her father's increasingly strange behavior. That evening, Martha sat cross-legged on the living room floor surrounded by family albums. She studied pictures of her mother holding her as a baby, family picnics, holiday celebrations, searching for something she couldn't articulate. George appeared in the doorway, clutching a whiskey glass that trembled visibly in his hand. His expression resembled that of someone approaching their own execution. "Martha," he said, voice barely audible. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've kept hidden for too long." A cold dread settled in Martha's stomach. After Robert's betrayal, another shock seemed unbearable. "What is it?" she asked, her voice small. George drained his glass in one swallow. "Not tonight. Tomorrow morning in my study. There's something I need to show you first." He turned away, climbing the stairs with the heaviness of a man carrying an impossible burden. Martha watched his retreating back, once mountainous in her childhood eyes, now bent and diminished. Sleep proved impossible. Near midnight, Martha padded downstairs for tea. Passing her father's study, she noticed light beneath the door. Curiosity drew her closer. Through the crack, she observed George hunched at his desk, a black wooden box open before him. This mysterious box, the one Martha had wondered about since childhood but was never permitted to open, seemed to command her father's complete attention. He touched its contents with reverence and fear, whispering words that might have been prayers or confessions. Martha backed away, heart racing. First her husband's infidelity, now her father's mysterious secret. How many foundations of her life would crumble before this was over? Back in her childhood bedroom, Martha sat on the edge of her bed, watching dawn slowly illuminate the sky. The photographer in her recognized the symbolism of this moment, the darkness of night giving way to morning's revelation. Whatever truth awaited in her father's study, Martha sensed it would fundamentally alter everything she believed about herself and her family. Her professional life had been dedicated to documenting truth through images. Now, she was terrified of what truths tomorrow might reveal. Morning sunlight streamed through the study windows. George led Martha into his sanctuary, bookshelves overflowing with volumes, walls adorned with his credentials and a first edition of Ulysses. They sat side by side on the worn leather sofa, George's hands trembling visibly. "What did you want to show me?" Martha asked quietly. George rose, moving to an oak bookshelf. He retrieved a black wooden box, the one item Martha had been explicitly forbidden to open as a child. The family secrets box. "I think it's time," George said, producing a small key. The lock turned with a decisive click that echoed in the silent room. Inside lay a photo album, yellowed love letters, and tiny baby shoes Martha recognized from photographs of herself as an infant. George handed her the album. Martha paged through images of her parents' early life, their meeting, engagement, their 1969 wedding. Her mother Eleanor's smile radiated from every image. At the bottom of the box lay an envelope marked DNA test results. With trembling fingers, Martha removed the single sheet. The clinical language was stark, 99.9% probability of no paternal relationship. The room tilted beneath her. Martha's legs weakened, forcing her to lean against the bookshelf. This sterile assessment threatened to unravel 55 years of identity in an instant. "What does this mean?" she asked, voice barely recognizable. George's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother had a former boyfriend before we married. When you were born, I had questions, but lacked courage to seek answers. Instead, I chose to love you as my daughter." He pointed to a framed photograph, one Martha had taken for a magazine, showing them side by side at her gallery opening. "When I saw this picture, I finally confronted what I'd always noticed, our eyes. Yours so different from mine. With my health declining, I needed to resolve this question I've carried all these years." Martha stared at the photograph as if seeing it for the first time. Despite thousands of images captured through her career, she had failed to see what was directly before her, the fundamental evidence of her identity. "His name?" Martha asked, composure crumbling. "Thomas Reed," George answered. "Your mother's college sweetheart. They had broken up before she met me, but apparently met once after our engagement was announced." "Is he still alive?" "No. He died 15 years ago," George replied sadly. "He never knew about you. Your mother never told him. Why keep this secret all these years?" Martha demanded, voice rising with anger and grief. "I had a right to know who I am. I was afraid," George admitted. "Afraid of losing you. Afraid you would stop thinking of me as your father. We wanted to give you a normal, happy family." George grasped Martha's hands. "Family isn't something that just exists. It's something we choose, day after day. And every single day, I chose to be your father. But this makes everything a lie." Martha cried, pulling away. My entire life, these 50 years. Were all our family memories just fictions? She moved to the window, staring at the ancient oak in the garden. Her body trembled. First Robert's betrayal, and now this, the very foundation of her identity crumbling beneath her. Who am I? She whispered. My roots, my genes, my real father. George moved toward her, but Martha raised her hand. Don't. Please. I need time to think. She fled the study, retreating to her childhood bedroom. Closing the door, she slid down against it until she sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest. Martha examined her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. She moved to the mirror, studying her face with the critical eye she usually reserved for her subjects. The features she had attributed to her mother now held new questions. The eyes George had mentioned, were they Thomas Reed's eyes looking back at her? Who am I? The question echoed. The identity she had constructed over 55 years dissolved like a photograph in developing solution, leaving only blank paper. She thought of her work, hundreds of family portraits she'd captured. She had always believed she was documenting truth. Now she wondered how many other families harbored secrets just as profound as her own. In her professional life, Martha had always controlled the narrative, deciding which moments to capture, which to display. But now, she had lost control of her own story. The curator of others' memories had discovered her own were built on shifting sand. The double betrayal, her husband's infidelity followed by this fundamental deception about her existence, left Martha feeling adrift. The foundations of her life, her marriage, her parentage, her very understanding of self, had been revealed as illusions. Outside her door, she heard George's hesitant footsteps approach, then retreat. What words could possibly bridge this chasm between them? Martha remained motionless, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was simultaneously familiar and a complete stranger. For a photographer who had dedicated her life to revealing truth through images, the irony was unbearable. The most important truth about herself had been hidden in plain sight, like a detail in a portrait she had failed to notice despite years of looking. The revelation recontextualized every memory of her childhood. Every birthday, every family dinner, every moment George had expressed pride in her accomplishments now appeared in a different light. Had their relationship been genuine, or merely a performance maintained to preserve a comfortable fiction? As day faded into evening, Martha reached a terrible clarity. Nothing in her life was what she had believed it to be. Not her marriage. Not her family. Not even herself. For days, Martha avoided George, sequestering herself in her childhood bedroom. She examined the contents of the black box repeatedly, each photograph, each letter, searching for clues she might have missed throughout her life. Dawnlight filtered through the kitchen window as Martha made coffee. She arranged family photographs on the table, Christmas gatherings, Thanksgiving dinners, birthday celebrations, studying them with both personal anguish and professional detachment. Blood ties can't be changed. But bonds can be chosen, she whispered to herself. The photos before her raised tormenting questions. Were these memories all lies? Yet the smiles captured in each image seemed undeniably genuine. George appeared in the doorway, hesitating before entering. He silently poured coffee and sat across from her, studying the photographs between them. "Good morning," he said quietly. Martha remained silent, tracing the edge of a Christmas photo where George was teaching her to use her first camera. Finally, she met his eyes. "You are my father. That hasn't changed." Her words came slowly, carefully chosen. "But I need to know everything. The complete truth." Relief washed over George's weathered face. "I'll answer anything you ask." Warm lamplight created a gentle atmosphere as they sat facing each other. The black box lay open between them, its contents carefully arranged. "I've carried this secret for over 50 years, George began, his voice steadier now. I've lived with both guilt for concealing the truth and fear of destroying our family. He picked up a photograph Martha had taken years ago, the three of them at her first gallery opening. Is this a lie? He asked, tapping the image. Are these smiles false? This joy fabricated? No photographer, not even one as talented as you, could capture happiness that wasn't real. His voice softened. Surely you understand there are things more important than blood. Martha studied the photograph, seeing it through new eyes. Why did Mother choose to have me? Martha asked. Back then, it would have been. She loved you, George answered simply. From the moment she knew you existed. Giving you up was never an option she considered. Martha nodded slowly, processing this. There's one more thing, George said, reaching into the box's bottom compartment. He withdrew an envelope yellowed with age, Eleanor's distinctive handwriting addressing it simply to my daughter. Your mother gave me this before she died 10 years ago. Asked me to share it when the time was right. His voice broke. I didn't have the courage then. Martha accepted the envelope with trembling hands. She unfolded the letter inside, her mother's handwriting both achingly familiar and somehow foreign. My beloved daughter, I was young and confused then. But through raising you, I learned blood connections mean nothing compared to love. You are the child of my heart. That is the only truth that matters. We chose you. And family bound by love rather than blood is the truest family of all. You have always been our daughter. Please don't blame George. He has loved you as his own from the beginning. His love transcends any biological connection. Who you are is determined not by DNA, but by your own choices. With eternal love, Mom. Martha lowered the letter, tears streaming silently down her face. George wept too, unashamed. She thought of me until the end, Martha whispered. She was an extraordinary mother, George agreed. And you've been an extraordinary daughter. Something shifted inside Martha as she gathered the photographs spread before them. Two profoundly different types of love crystallized in her mind, Robert's betrayal despite wedding vows versus her parents' unwavering devotion without biological obligation. Aren't you curious about your biological father? George asked carefully. Martha shook her head. He's gone. And besides. She looked directly into George's eyes. My father is sitting right here. She reached for his hand. I understand now that some bonds are stronger than blood. I might have been born from a mistake, but I was raised in love. That was never a mistake. George pulled her into a long embrace that seemed to bridge 50 years of love and the recent chasm of secrets between them. Did you ever regret it? She asked against his shoulder. Raising another man's child? George pulled back, framing her face with his hands as he had when she was small. Not for a single moment. Some men are fathers because of biology. I got to be a father because I chose to be, every day. And that choice has been the greatest privilege of my life. She wished she could freeze this instant, not with a camera, but in her heart. I've spent my life capturing other people's truth, Martha said. How ironic that I missed the most important truth in my own family portrait. Perhaps, George suggested gently, what you captured was the deeper truth, not the biological facts, but the love that made us a family. Martha nodded, understanding dawning. Perhaps she had always known on some level that family transcended genetics. It was why her photographs of chosen families had always been her strongest work. Where do we go from here? George asked. Martha gathered her mother's letter and the scattered photographs, carefully returning them to the black box. But she left the lid open. Forward, she said simply. With nothing hidden anymore. Martha sat across from her attorney, pen poised over the divorce papers. Are you certain? The middle-aged female attorney asked. No possibility of reconciliation? I'm certain, Martha replied, her voice quiet but unwavering. She signed her name with steady strokes, dissolving a quarter-century union. Though sadness lingered in her eyes, Martha's face showed newfound resolve. She had cycled through grief, rage, and confusion. Now, she had arrived at something resembling peace. Stepping outside, Martha felt spring air caress her face. Flower petals drifted through the air like nature's celebration of new beginnings. She took a deep breath, allowing the scent of possibility to fill her lungs. She called George. "Dad. It's done. Today marks the beginning of my new life." On the other end, George's voice trembled slightly. "Congratulations, sweetheart." Walking through the city park, Martha felt an urge that had been dormant since discovering Robert's betrayal. She reached for her camera. The muscle memory returned like an old friend as she photographed sunlight through leaves, children laughing, an elderly couple holding hands. Photography had always been Martha's way of preserving truth. Now she realized it could also discover new truths, capturing not just what was, but what could be. That evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Robert. "Got the divorce papers. I made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. 25 years can't be thrown away. I can't live without you." Martha read it twice, feeling nothing but a dull ache where sharp pain had once resided. She set the phone down without replying and instead reached for the woodworking tools George had given her, his father's tools, now crossing the invisible boundary of biology to connect them. Weeks later, sunlight streamed through the windows of Martha's new apartment. Though smaller than the home she'd shared with Robert, the space felt entirely her own, walls adorned with her photographs, arranged according to her preferences. Martha was crafting a wooden shelf when the doorbell rang. Robert stood there, noticeably thinner, his face haggard. He clutched a bouquet eerily similar to the one that had revealed his affair. "Can we talk?" he asked. Martha let him in but didn't accept the flowers. Robert glanced around nervously. "Nice place," he said awkwardly. "But I want you to come home. What happened with Caitlin was a mistake. You can't throw away 25 years over one lapse in judgment." Martha studied his face, the face she had once memorized. Yet she felt oddly detached, as if viewing him through her camera lens. "You swore vows and became family, then betrayed me," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "My father had no biological connection to me, made no vows, yet loved me unconditionally my entire life. I now understand what true bonds really mean." Robert opened his mouth to object, then closed it. The quiet strength in Martha's eyes silenced whatever arguments he had prepared. "Please leave," Martha said simply. "There's no future for us." Robert's shoulders slumped in defeat. Martha watched him walk to the door, his retreating back no longer casting a shadow over her life. As she closed the door behind him, Martha heard the soft click of the latch, a sound that represented not loss, but liberation. Golden spring light bathed Martha's apartment. She stood at her workbench, applying final touches to her creation, a wooden box crafted from ebony and maple. Unlike George's somber black box of secrets, Martha's creation incorporated contrasting woods, darkness and light coexisting, past and future integrated rather than hidden. This box, made with George's inherited tools, symbolized everything Martha had believed in, lost, and rediscovered. It was more open, more welcoming than her father's secret repository, designed to display treasures rather than conceal them. Martha opened it, carefully arranging its contents, selected items from George's secret box and her silver anniversary collection. The final addition was a new photograph of George and herself taken the previous week. The image captured the moment their initially awkward poses had transformed into genuine smiles. "Blood relations, chosen family, and who I am now, all parts of me," she whispered. The morning light caught the photograph of George, his eyes crinkling with the same smile he'd given her throughout childhood. Martha nodded to the image and closed her newly crafted box, not to hide its contents, but to protect them. She gathered her camera bag, preparing for her workshop at the local senior center. The day's theme, preserving family memories, had once been her specialty. Now she would approach it with deeper understanding. Before leaving, Martha surveyed her new home. What she had once defined as family had disintegrated, but in its place, she had discovered a more profound understanding. True family transcended blood and marriage certificates. It was built on choice and love, refreshed each day through actions rather than obligations. Camera in hand, Martha stepped out into the spring morning. Family isn't in the blood. It's in the choosing, she thought, her heart lighter than it had been in months. With this truth as her compass, Martha's new journey had just begun.